on health inequality, communicable diseases, social determinants of health, health policy and planning, SDGs, etc. She has completed many research projects and she is a fellow of Higher Education Academy, the Royal Society for Public Health, Royal Society of Bioethics Society, and many more. Dr. Chakraborty is a reviewer of bulletin of WHO, Bangladesh Journal of Bioethics, Rootlet, etc. And also is an editorial member of many journals. She has made several publications related to healthcare in her credit, and in 2011 she got an award in Bhavananda Datta Memorial Essay Competition on the environmental awareness in systems of Indian philosophy in 86th session of Indian Philosophical Congress, and in 2019 she received the Best Lecturer Award in Health and Social Care, London Churchill College, London, UK. She was awarded many scholarships as well. Today she is going to speak in the online mode on impact of COVID-19 on gender across country perspectives. We are all eagerly waiting for Dr. Chakraborty's lecture, so let us concentrate on her. So over to you, Dr. Chakraborty.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. So, can you hear me all right?
Yes, you're audible, but I think it should be more clarity should be
Am
there.
I audible?
Hello?
Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you.
Okay, can you hear me all right?
Yes, but if the sound can be a bit more, then I think that would be better for us.
Sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Yes. Now I think it's audible. She's audible, I think, to everyone. Yes. Continue.
Is it okay that I start the session?
Please start, madam.
Please start your session.
Okay, thank you. Right, thank you so much. Let me, I will say a few words and then I will put it on the slideshow mode, okay? So I hope I'm audible to everyone. Thank you. Oh, I can see the camera is moving. So yeah, okay, good to see a few faces in the room. So thank you. I know sometimes probably it will be a bit tiring at the end of the day, a post-lunch session especially. So I will try to be brief and try to be engaging. But if you have anything to say, please you can speak to me. Maybe once I finish the session. Other than that, what I want to say is that this is a bit of work in progress. But thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for inviting me. Coming to ECGC and present is like, and to present on a particular topic on research is like, it feels like coming home again. I wish I was there, but I couldn't be there. So I'm meeting you virtually, and the topic that I'm going to present is the impact of COVID-19 on gender, but it's a cross-country study. Now, why it's cross-country? What kind of study is that? Definitely, it's a qualitative study. I think whatever you heard in all the plenary sessions from yesterday, I think I'm going to sum up on everything through my topic here. Now, why it's a cross-country study? Because if I put it on the slideshow mode, you will see. Right. Just let me know if you can still see my screen on the slideshow mode. Everyone. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah. So why it's a cross-country study? Because this study is basically a part of the WeCope committee, so which is also part of the EBA's Ethics Institute. This is an interdisciplinary organization, multidisciplinary group from global background, and we, as part of this institute, it's an independent think tank, an independent organization which was formed by Dr. Daryl Messer, a Cambridge graduate, and we formed this committee during the pandemic time, and we actually published a lot of statements out of it, a lot of papers during that time. So this is very much a bioethics institution, and we try to work on different topics in different times. But our aim is to support, gather the experiences, support government on and the non-government organizations, merge the theory and practice in all aspects as much as we can do, and also to work independently without any bias. But we do involve members who are from, as I mentioned, from different countries, from different backgrounds. Some are doctors, some are engineers, some are in the academics, some are, the early researchers. So we involve from all disciplines, from all the countries of the world. Now, during the COVID time, we felt that there is a need of to build up and come up with an pandemic ethics committee to actually address few of the issues of the world emergency, which is a global issue, but also there were some country specific issues as well. So we had a lot of subcommittees from there, but then I got the opportunity to actually chair the subcommittee of the gender. Now, how come the subcommittee on the gender came up? So we were working on other subcommittees, but then gradually the all the news from the how the COVID actually how the pandemic is impacting the genders differently in different countries. So the news started coming up. So we thought that why not we look into that how the gender is getting impacted, not just women but men as well and the other genders as well, which were not so much in the news. But also sociologically and from the ethical perspective, if we see, so gender always had played a role in an individual's exposure and susceptibility to the diseases, to different health conditions, and even shaped up the health outcomes. So, how much ill we will become, how much, whether we are nearing to the death or not. So, gender played a very big role on that. If we look back, so few years back, so recently suffered from COVID-19, but if we go back to 2003 and 2004, so that was the SARS-CoV-1 pandemic, we can say. The whole world probably were not affected in a way, but it was still called a pandemic. It was declared as a pandemic because many of the Asian countries were impacted by it. So that was the 2004, and in that it was noticed that the men were more affected from the SARS-CoV-1. Now the it was investigation continued, so inquiries continued, and people tried to explore more on the underlying causes, and the lifestyle actually of the men were blamed to be the reason that why the men were more impacted by the COVID. But the another, as a researcher, what I can say is that the other reason could be that probably that time we didn't look much into the gender impact on the reason or the cause of the gender, on how the gender is getting affected or impacted by this SARS. So the whole attention was on the men and why the men are getting more impacted by the SARS-CoV-1. But historically or systematically in the society, if we see that a woman actually live longer, but not necessarily they do live a better and healthier lives than the men. And definitely the interface of the sex, gender, woman, that as I mentioned, it's play a big role on the increased rate of illness or that whether the person is succumbing to the mortality and the morbidity as well. The one reason it's ascribed to the woman being more impacted to these is very much related to the pregnancy and the childbirth, as well as the chronic and other infectious diseases where women have got less immunity and more susceptible to those diseases. But there are again different socioeconomic factors behind it. Now, as the pandemic progressed, so we had the increased reports of the domestic abuse, the differential impacts on the gender started appearing. So we formed the committee on the gender. And to be very honest with you, so this is still a bit of work in progress. So the statement and the report and the publication is in its way. So it hasn't been published yet. So I'm presenting so that we can understand that what's going on in different parts of the world, how it impacted us, not just women, not just men, but the different genders. And even if it's men and women, then some particular groups of men and women, and how it impacted all of us, the COVID pandemic of 2019 and 2020. So the pandemic and the report came up that during the latest pandemic of COVID-19, so the reports were that the men had the higher mortality and the morbidity rates from the COVID-19, like the SARS-CoV-1. So, but that was the initial report that started coming in. But gradually it came up to the news. It makes a very good presence and appearance all kinds of reports that women are also the invisible sufferers, and how are they getting suffered or how are they getting impacted. So staying at home or maybe working from home, if I put it in this way, so doing the work at work, and it's basically the women were suffering more in managing the or balancing the work and life. And also with the in certain sectors, so the sectors are very much dominated by the woman, if I put it in this way. So and with the COVID lockdown, with the business getting affected and all, so the women were the worst sufferers in those kinds of industries and those sectors. Now, say for example, the domestic workers. So we see mainly that the women or the females are actually taking part as the domestic workers or the domestic help. So we know what happened in probably in our home or probably in our country, but that was a global feature. So with the travel restrictions or domestic workers who used to travel from different South Asian countries, so they got financially challenged, they lost job, and uncertainty actually loomed large on their lives. And not to mention that they are not coming from the very well-to-do family. They are not coming from those privileged backgrounds. So it's their socioeconomic challenges or socioeconomic restrictions probably actually are asking them to choose that particular kind of work or to work as the domestic worker. Now, if we go back to the China, so even the China so if in China, so the State Council Information Office, they actually declared somehow in their report that 90% of their healthcare workers in one of their provinces were women. And that showed that the gendered nature of the health workforce, and which also shows that who is at most risk out of the when the workforce actually consists of 90% of the women in the force. Now, also, if there were closure of schools as well, so with the closure of schools, so who actually took more responsibility in a way? So it's the mothers, it's the wives in the household. So, and that was the feature in many of the countries. So in China, Hong Kong, Italy, South Korea, and beyond, even in the United Kingdom. So we have noticed that with the closure of the schools, managing the work, managing the lifestyle, home, cooking, and then managing the child's education as well. So it created a lot of pressure, mental pressure on the woman. So to look into all of these, and also to, as the think tanks, different think tanks actually started coming up, that we need to have a more gendered perspective on the impact of the COVID-19. So to look into all these issues, to look into all these intersectional issues as well. So we formed the gender subcommittee, and as I mentioned that it's a very global feature in this, and the members especially included from the Bangladesh, India, Canada, Ethiopia, and Malaysia, and the United Kingdom as well. So what did we do actually, and how did we start to find the articles and the literature? Now, initially, this study is started from 2020, so it's still a bit of ongoing. As I mentioned, it's a work in progress. Initially, we had to rely a lot on the regional languages, on the newspapers, the grey literature, the reports coming up from different, say, on the domestic abuse cells in each of the country, some regional associations, and also we had to include some personal narratives from each one of these countries. So we tried to focus as much as we can on the gender, the impacts of COVID-19 on the gender in the different countries, if there is any ethical connotation coming up from there or not. So any duplicated literature definitely we excluded, and thoroughly we are going to focus on the qualitative study, and it is a thematic analysis that we are going to focus on. Now, so coming to the country specific situation, so I mean, irrespective of the gender, I would say here at least, the women were actually impacted more. But if we look into the country-specific characteristics, if we go a bit more in depth of the situation, so we have seen that the women in Bangladesh, especially those who are working in the ready-made garment industry, so they were the worst affected out of the COVID-19. Yes, the many of the reasons were true, like the other reasons in the other countries, or probably what we have seen surrounding us. But in a way, financially, in the economic impact, in a negative way, was more on the garment workers, especially the women garment workers who were working in the ready-made garment industry in Bangladesh. Now, why is that? So the reason is that the ready-made garment industries, or which is popularly called, they call it as the RMG. So they actually holds the second position in the world after China, and these they actually contribute a lot in the GDP, in the government GDP there. And see, if you see, the majority of the workforce in the ready-made garment industry there is actually women and the females, but not necessarily is just women or women of the adult age. They start working in this industry from very young age, and if we look into their socioeconomic backgrounds, they don't come from any privileged backgrounds. They need to join the industry to earn something to actually raise the expense for their family. So, if we look into the stats of the ready-made garment industry in Bangladesh, so they include a lot of young girls as well. Okay, so they start from 13, 14, 15 years of age, and they start working on this. Now, this garment industry, or it's why this industry and how are they contributing, rather than if we don't speak about GDP, if we speak on the other side, on the ethical aspects of it. So RMG industries in Bangladesh actually are contributing and trying to empower the women and the girls in the country. Okay, they are trying to help them socioeconomically. They're trying to actually place them in a better of position by recruiting them making them financially independent by involving them in these RNG industries. But when it comes to a pandemic, we have seen that they were the worst hit. And so when we looked into the details of it, so we noticed that there were some underlying challenges already there. So they already faced these women and the girls. They were already facing discrimination, harassment. There were the tremendous wage gap, the unequal pay, if we say in this. So at one side, it's a part of their empowerment process, but on the other side, there were underlying challenges, and it caused a great economic burden on them once the COVID hit the country. So that's but to be very honest with you again, so this is a very much similar reflection in many other garment producing countries of the world. So Bangladesh is just one of them. Now, other than the women or the females working in the ready-made garment industry in Bangladesh, the other gender which was tremendously impacted and affected was the third gender, as we quote as the third gender on this. Now they act with the lockdown, with the social distancing, so their business got impacted definitely. Some of them were the government and some NGOs came on later on to help them with the day-to-day services, but with the supportive measures. But the mental worry that how long it's going to continue, whether we are going to gain the place back in the society in whatever manner we had before the COVID, or whether we are going to have an income or not. So those kinds of thoughts and anxiety never left them behind. So if we look into the Bangladesh in general, so we see definitely there were some differential economic impacts on the gender, and definitely there were some mental health sufferings among different genders. Now, the next country we can focus on the Ethiopia and how the COVID-19 impacted the Ethiopian women especially. Now, like China, as we have seen in one of the slides before, in Ethiopia, so 52% of the health workforce is actually consisted of the women or the females, right? Again, that's part of the a bit of the sort of helping them with their financial independence, but also it's a very much cultural factor there that a woman especially choose the profession of choose the profession of nursing, or want the women want to be the nurse in the healthcare workforce, because it's very much cultural in them, because women are always the primary carer of the sick at the household, and also it's a means of income, so they go ahead and join the healthcare workforce to work as the primary carer of the sick in the different healthcare setting. But when the actually COVID hit the country, so the mortality and morbidity rates of the women were a bit higher than the men. But the most concerning issue was that exactly there was no such data on how many women were actually suffered from the COVID-19. How many women got ill, or how many women died out of COVID-19 on this. So this underreporting or unreporting of the instances is it's also very much cultural in the country. Again, the underlying challenge is that why they weren't reported or why there was not such data on that. It's because of the existing, socioeconomic culture, like the existing gender violence, harassment, the discrimination, and also the country faced with the increased intimate partner violence during the COVID-19 phase as well. That prompted or that provoked the woman not to report about their illness or the cases or the abuses probably they were undergoing that time. Now, in Ethiopia, the worst case situation was that the country was going through a civil war when especially in the northern part of the country, when the COVID-19 actually did reach the country or did hit the country in a way. Now, eventually, actually, I think they got the support from India for the vaccines manufactured in India, but there were actually lack of data and evidence that how women got impacted by the COVID-19 and how many women actually made it through to the COVID-19, or how many women got the vaccines at the first stage working in the healthcare workforce. So it's still a bit of, we are still trying to explore those issues and the data now, and trying to get those information from the country. Now, if I look back into this, if I look into this country as a whole, so definitely there were differential physical and mental health outcomes, especially for the gender or especially for the woman in the country. Now, when we come to the India, so I think we all know. So when all of us are joining this platform, or when you are there in Kolkata, so we know that what we faced during the COVID-19 in India, right? So we know in and out of it, but we know that different genders got impacted. But here we are just trying to focus on the most disadvantaged groups who got impacted by the COVID-19. Now, we know there are the caste hierarchies in the society, but that still continued during the COVID-19. So, which was a bit sad, which was a bit upsetting. And if we talk from the ethical perspective, so that's actually impacted the human rights of those disadvantaged groups in the society. Now, even if a transgender person, when the transgender person went to buy a sanitizer just to protect himself or herself, if we say, the protect itself in a way, probably the right word to define it. And then the question came to in response, the question came forward that how can you people get the virus, right? You are not a particular, you do not belong to any particular gender. You are not a man, you are not a woman. So how can you get the virus, right? And you have got more immunity, or you are already ill. So that's the existing perception in the society. Now, initially, when gradually there were more help, but initially we saw that different genders, including the transgenders, the HIV and the HIV/AIDS patient within the transgenders as well, were more susceptible to the COVID-19. And initially, there was no such help or no such support for them. Now, in general, what we see and summarize, there are lots of issues, but if I summarize it from India, so we see that gender, actually, the well-being of the different genders got impacted. There were different mental and physical health outcomes, which actually increase their vulnerabilities to the exposure and the susceptibility to the COVID-19. Now, in Malaysia, that's our next country to focus on. So, in Malaysia, if we see there were sharp increase in the domestic violence due to the lockdown and people being staying with the abusive partner in a way. So, we see that in the first few months of the lockdown, I think they went into the lockdown almost at the same time of India, so in March 2020. So, but there was a 57% increase in the first of domestic abuse in the first few months of lockdown. But what we see here is 7% is the reported calls. Okay, so I'm quite sure there are, and probably will agree with me that there were more cases which were unreported in the during the COVID lockdown phases. Now, in general, if we look into the Malaysian society, so like many other countries, the women do more unpaid work than men in the country, even though do the same hours of the men at the workplace, but then the doing the amount of work is much more on the woman's shoulder than on the men. And again, like many other South Asian countries, the women domestic workers got affected in the Malaysia. And there is a segregation in the Malaysian culture. We see that there is a segregation of that which gender will do what kind of work. So men probably have more education and can go for the higher job statuses, or so can get promotion easily. But a woman, and also coming from the underprivileged or not and all those work which are not very paid, and all these kinds of segregation of the working society, the the researcher observed that made them exposed to the COVID-19 in the country, right? And once we summarize it, we see that definitely there were differential exposures and susceptibility because of the kind of work that they do, the women do in the country. And many of them actually didn't get initially, they didn't get that help from the different agencies, let's say, for with proper protective gears and all those, and which made them more vulnerable to the disease. Now the situation in Turkey, if we go to Turkey, and it was a bit similar in I would say Egypt and Iran as well. So, but I would report here from the Turkey that what we found from the Turkey and how did it impact the COVID-19 impact the gender there. Now, in Turkey, the main impact definitely was on the women of the country. So that there was so much increase in the on such a, I mean, the domestic abuse case in the country, the intimate partner violence in the country, it increased in such a rate that the researchers said it's like a state of emergency in the country. So if you see the data from the in the first year, so if you see the data, that's from the reported data, the official data. So you see that how many murders have taken place, and these murders are actually taken place. I mean, the who were murdered, it's mainly the females, right? Was it a particular age group? Not at all on this, but it can included, say, from a teenage to the middle-aged woman as well. Where were they murdered in a way? So they were murdered sometimes mainly at the home because there were increased rate of intimate partner violences, but also they were murdered if there is any personal issues or there is like that. So there were some murders in other places outside the home as well. So, I mean, it increased in such a rate, and that the researchers from the country and the think tank started questioning the Istanbul Convention as well, which is a convention on the Human Rights Act, and they started questioning about where are the human rights of this woman. Right. Now, the underlying causes, if we see there, so we see that maybe this the increase in the rise of the violence is maybe the change of the laws there, or maybe it's from the reluctance of the officials to report the actual causes. Again, it could be vested interest, it could be the biasness, or it could be many other the socioeconomic conditions. So yeah, if we summarize it from here, so what we see from the COVID-19 and its impact on the gender on Turkey, it was definitely on the woman. of different age groups, and the underlying reasons and the differentialities, if we see, it's definitely their institutional identity as well, that women were considered as like not superior to men but subordinates to men in the society. And definitely there were some personal issues maybe that gave rise to the clashes between the families, then women got killed or murdered, and then that's also increased the intimate partner violence as well. So, differential social status, differential institutional identity, and the existing personal problem impacted women more in Turkey during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, if we look into the United Kingdom, so definitely women were more impacted than others, definitely, but depending on the what kind of job they are doing on that, again, the women were more in the unpaid work in the country. They still are, but I mean, the sector is trying to be more organized, if I can say. Now, but the disabled women faced more hardship, and not to mention the ethnic minority groups in the country. So the women were impacted, but also men were highly impacted from that. So if you see this stat from here, so the BAME men, that is the Black, Asian, and ethnic minority men, in the United Kingdom, their mental health conditions deteriorated a lot during the COVID-19 pandemic. There were different, again, there are different reasons, different underlying health reasons, there are different underlying, say, socioeconomic reasons as well for this. But while the men were more impacted mentally, the BEM women were more impacted physically out of the COVID-19. But again, so what we see from here is the differential health outcomes, differential vulnerabilities. But many of the conditions, we can say they were already pre-existing in the society. Now, if I identify here the causes and what we see here, so in Bangladesh, we have seen the women as the industry workers, and the other gender, they were very much face the differential health outcomes on this. In Ethiopia, definitely the women in general and the women healthcare workers again who face the these differentialities of the vulnerabilities and the exposure to COVID-19. In India, it's mainly the already all women probably were impacted, but already disadvantaged people, the women of that category and the other gender were impacted. Women in general in Malaysia, women in general in Turkey, because as I mentioned, so we are trying to look into that if other disadvantaged groups and women from those groups were impacted more into these countries or not. And if we look into the United Kingdom, so the study is more onto the both genders, so men and women, but from different ethnic groups. Now, what we see here on these is that definitely they had the differential exposure and susceptibility to the disease. Definitely, all of them face the differential mental health impacts, differential economic impact, and which actually made their health outcomes differentials, but that actually exposed a bit of or unleashed or and opened up, actually made it very transparent that these differentialities are all because of the existing inequalities in the society. If something was in the structure, then that got exposed when the disaster actually hit the countries. So yeah, so shall we accept that we have the existing inequalities and we haven't thought about it during the disaster and how that would have impacted the gender during the disaster time? So answer probably is yes. Can we accept that we have a gendered society no matter which part of the world we come from? The answer is yes. So but if there is any changing pattern that we haven't noticed during the COVID-19, but do we need to change the pattern? Yes, we do need to the next disaster. So that's all from my side. And so if I can say that the contributors for this work actually are from the different countries, as I mentioned. And thank you so much. So my profile is available in the ResearchGate, where once this is published, so it will be available there along with the UBIOS website as well. And this is my email address. And thank you for your patience listening.
Thank you, Dr. Chakraborty. It was a well research study, gender study during the COVID-19 period. You have very thoroughly worked about the impact on different countries like Bangladesh, India, Ethiopia, Turkey, Malaysia, UK, and everything. And you explained very vividly about the impact that the women faced. So what we can see from her study that although it's she repeatedly was saying that it's still a work in progress, they are still working on it, they are still finding out the data. And so what we can see is that women being the most suffering gender, uh, because we all have experienced probably also during the COVID-19 that we have to take more burden as far as the work, as well as the managing the home, everything is concerned. So definitely women were the sufferer. And as she said that the third gender also suffered a lot. But though the initial help was not available to that extent, but still, as far as the case studies of different cross-country study was concerned, we can see that some specific industries, women in the specific industries were affected more. They were increased in the domestic violence also in some of the countries. So women were impacted, as she said, more physically compared to their male counterpart. And also she discussed that definitely depending on the different economic and social outcomes, the health outcomes were different. So the impact was really different. So they are still working on it, and we can in future probably we will get more data, more research analysis from them. So thank you, Dr. Chakraborty. Just one question from my part, though it may not be very related to your studies, that after the pandemic, is it that did you find this? You were saying probably uh, in Malaysia that the domestic violence was high. Maybe in India and in other many countries also domestic violence increased. But is it that after the COVID pandemic, do you have any idea or any study that has it gone down or any idea relating to that?
Sorry, I can only hear that there was a question, but I didn't get the question. I'm so sorry. Can if is it possible to type it down so that I can see it and try to reply?
Actually, I was saying that after the COVID-19, did you have any findings about whether the domestic violence has gone down?
So after the COVID-19.
Yes, the violence, domestic violence, has it
Oh,
gone
okay.
down?
No, right. So the violence actually increased during the lockdown phase. Right. It started with the intimate partner violence. So it started with the very close family members, and the reason being that the potential victims, were actually staying under the same roof with the abuser. So that actually increased the rate of the violence. So this is actually, it's a very good point. So we can see the rate of violence, but that could be the another study probably on this, so to see the change rate of violence as before and after COVID on this, or during the COVID and after COVID. But we didn't focus especially on the rate of change of the violences, but we wanted to see that how the gender is getting impacted in general. And we wanted to look into the underlying socioeconomic features which were already existing but actually caused or contributed more onto this increased rate of say violences against different genders or discrimination against different genders.
Thank you, madam. So, can I just open it to the session for question answer? Do you, any one of you, any speaker or any one of the participant, do you have any question? Then you can raise it.
Yeah, I would like to hear a few questions, please. That will help us to improve.
Yes, please. I think in the post-lunch session, everybody is so tired. Probably, I don't
You're
know.
tired. Yeah, post lunch session is you're not very good in the not very productive, right? And also silence can be taken in either positive way or negative way. So how shall I take it? Positive way. Yes, please. Okay, it's good to see one hand. Yes, please. Maybe yes, that would be better if you can come closer.
Actually, you have talked about domestic violence, and I think the focus is mostly on women. But I want to know whether you have studied the impact of COVID-19 on children and the violence on the children.
I cannot hear clearly.
Uh, I want to know that have you studied or have you find evidences of domestic violence on children? What has been the impact of COVID-19 on children? Because they couldn't go to schools, they were tied at homes. So it is not that the distinction should be between male and female, but I think we can think of the impact on the children also.
Okay, so right, I'm struggling a bit to listen it very carefully and clearly.
So let me
Right.
repeat.
So,
So let me repeat.
did are you saying that is the children?
Yes, yes. What is the impact on
Okay,
children?
so is
What has
okay.
been
So
the
if there is
domestic
any
violence?
right, again because our focus on the gender. So now this PowerPoint presentation is a summary of our background report. So it's still a white report, as I mentioned. It's still we are working on it, right? So there is, yes, I agree with you. We didn't look into the specific aspect of the children because we focus on the gender. But if in some of the countries that within that gender, it included, say, for example, in Bangladesh, the young girls probably starting from 13, 14 years of age, they start working in these garment industries, right? So our focus was mainly on that gender, but not in general on the children especially. Again, that can be another study if anyone wants to do the work on that.
Since there is no more questions, so thank you, Dr. Chakraborty, for your insightful thoughts. We will be eagerly waiting in future for your study results once it is complete. And we will hope we will get more findings about domestic violence as well. Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Chakraborty.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ECGC. As I mentioned, it feels like coming home. And my special gratitude to Dr. Shoma Chakravarti, so and all the organizers and the conveners of the this international seminar. So thank you so much. I wish you all the best and good luck to all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
So we are coming to the second part of this session, where the speaker is Dr. Shantanu Ghosh, who is actually a professor of economics, WBSES. He has completed his postdoctorate from University of Milan, Italy, and he has got scholarship under the IES uh, exchange policy. In his academic career, he has served several institutions like IIM Ahmedabad as research scholar, St. Xavier's College, Haldia Government College as lecturer, Presidency College, Darjeeling Government College as senior lecturer, Hooghly Mohsin College as assistant professor, and Maulana Azad College as professor. He worked as a short-term visiting scholar in the Faculty of Economics, Cambridge University, and also as short-term visiting researcher in the Graduate School in Social and Political Studies, University of Milan. He was awarded K. N. Raj Research Fellowship by Center for Development Studies, Trivandrum. He is a life member of many organizations like the Indian Economic Association, Indian Economic Society, Indian Society of Labor Economics, and many more. He is also a member of Royal Economic Society of Great Britain. Dr. Ghosh has written approximately 30 papers and articles published in national journals and edited book volumes. He also has almost 10 years of editorial experience. He has a diploma in the language of Italy and Italian language, and also has completed a certificate course in Germany. So we are waiting for Dr. Ghosh, and I think he himself will mention this topic. Please, So before he starts his speech, there is a small formalities. We will felicitate Dr. Ghosh.
Thank you so much. I think in the same organization, I am getting it, but the other speaker. What you should send. Thank you. And I appreciate the work of the students. And it gives me an idea that I should propose the same thing to our college. The students, their talent should be done.
Over to Dr. Ghosh.
I think it's your connected from here.
Yes.
এখান থেকেই করতে হবে না?
No, I
স্যার আপনার তো পেন ড্রাইভ আছে।
have pendrive রাখাই আছে।
আচ্ছা, রাখাই আছে, আমি করে দিচ্ছি।
আচ্ছা এইটাকে কি এখানে তুলে দিতে পারি?
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ নিশ্চয়ই স্যার। স্যার আপনি তো ওখানে বলবেন, আমি এইদিকে ঘুরিয়ে দিচ্ছি আপনাকে।
হ্যাঁ আমি এইটাকে এখানে তুলে দেওয়ার জন্য
বলছি উনি চাইছেন যে উপরে বলবেন।
না আমি আমার
না
আমরা
না,
এটা থেকে
হ্যাঁ
করে
হ্যাঁ,
দিতে
এটা থেকে করে দিলে হয়ে যাবে।
নট আমি এখানে ডাইরেক্ট করে দেব জাস্ট একটা রুমাল দিয়ে
লুকিয়ে লুকিয়ে করতে হবে।
আচ্ছা
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ,
ওপরে তোলা যাবে না?
মানে ওনার মুখটা আসবেন না, জিমিটে ওটা করা হচ্ছে তো।
ও তাহলে কোথায় আমার যেতে হবে?
আপনি
এইখানে দাঁড়াতে হবে।
হ্যাঁ, কিন্তু আপনি ওইদিকেও ওখানে করতে পারেন।
না, এটা স্লাইড গুলো চেঞ্জ করতে
স্পিড ওটা তো দেখতে পারি না, আমি অসুবিধা নেই। এই যে চেঞ্জ করতে পারবেন এটা দিয়ে।
এটা দিয়ে
হ্যাঁ
আচ্ছা
এটাতে
আর চেয়ারগুলো একটু সরিয়ে দেবো।
কি আর থাকবো না।
দেখি
আমি এটা দিয়ে দিন না, এটা দিয়ে বলতে পারি।
এটা কোনটা আপ বললেন এই রাইট
এটা না এটা।
এটা
হ্যাঁ। আর যদি পয়েন্টটা দরকার হয় তাহলে রিপোর্টটা ডাটা হয়।
I think you have to switch on the lights, some of the lights. So, good afternoon. Thank you, everybody. I especially thank the principal of the college and the organizers of this conference for giving me an opportunity to present a very short paper, on gender. At the very outset, I should admit that I am not an expert on gender studies, and I have never presented any paper on gender, maybe as far as I recall it. My area of interest is nowadays is mostly history of economic thought, and because of that interest, I thought that I can try to focus on some historical part of gender issues. And the title is like this, and as you see at the crossroads of the millennium, a glimpse at the woman in action. So,
স্যার আপনি কন্টিনিউ কন্টিনিউ করুন, আমরা একটুখানি স্লাইডটা
Okay.
দেখতে
Uh, so, in 1999, we are very eager to uh, go to 2000, a new millennium started. So we are in a new millennium. It is not new after 24 years, I should say. But when I hear you the term millennium, I go further back when the world went from 1899 to now. So 125 years. So I basically have tried to see what was the involvement of the woman in the academics at that time. So today, women are on the forefront in the academics. They are contributing papers. In fact, what I see, that I think this is everywhere in both global aspects and in India, the number of girl students is quite high, and the girl students are performing better in percentage most of the institutions. So today's scenario is different, but it was not so when I take 125 years back situation. So we have been arguing that the history of the movement is mostly a history of discrimination and a fight against various odds and challenges. And academics have been no exception. The women would not be given appointment, even if they were given appointment, they would not be given the desk to work or chair to sit. They have to sit and work somewhere else. There are several instances. So I talk of academics. This discrimination and this fight is valid in other cases, say in politics, in sports, in say labor unions everywhere. So it is not possible to cover everything. But I have basically focused on academics, and that too in a very narrow sense. As you see, the number of professional and academic journals nowadays is very high. Almost every year, maybe some new journal is coming. The number of journals in just social sciences is also too many. But it was not so some 100 or 125 years ago. So I basically, the methodology that I adopted, I basically tried to focus on some scholarly journals and tried to see basically how many women they would write articles, research articles, or contribute to review papers in those articles to get an idea about the contribution and involvement of women in the academy. And as I said, that I have focused mostly on economics and social sciences. We should try, or those who are competent, they can think other areas like physics, chemistry, natural sciences, biological sciences. So I think it needs to be documented, and I am not sure whether there has been documentation in this yet. So, as you know, that in many higher institutions and universities, women had no access. They would not be given admission. Even if they would get admission, they would not be given degrees. So, situation was not so what you find today, and there was also a suffragette movement. The students of political science, sociology, and social science, they they should know it that when women had to fight for their voting rights, the women got their voting rights much later, after First World War, in many countries, particularly out there. So uh, you can see the discrimination that women face. Now, as I said, I will not talk about science because I am not competent enough to talk about science, but I will just mention two names. One is Marie Curie, who was basically a Polish woman. And you see that in 1904 and in 1910, I have given two references, at least which she produced. And as you know, that she was the first woman Nobel laureate in 1903. She shared it with her husband Henry Becquerel. Sorry, Pierre Curie and Henry Becquerel of France. And Marie Curie also got a second Nobel in 1911 in chemistry. And she was the first person, not just the first woman, but the first person to get two Nobel Awards. So the name of Marie Curie is known to everyone. But the other one is Lise Meitner. Do you have any physics department here in this college? Physics department in this college? You have. So the students of physics, they must be knowing the Austrian lady who basically coined the term nuclear fission. Lise Meitner is possibly the most known face of discrimination in Nobel Prize. She got 19 nominations for chemistry Nobel and 30 nominations for physics Nobel. Her collaborator, Otto Hahn, got the Nobel Prize, but she was denied. So, spanning a period of almost 5 decades, she will be nominated time and again, many times, but the Nobel Committee didn't award her. This is, I think, one of the greatest omissions in the history of the Nobel Prize. Another greatest omission is then the case of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi was supposed to get the prize in 48, possibly, but he died on January 30, and as per the Nobel rules, posthumous prizes are not allowed. So in 48, significantly, the Nobel Committee, Peace Committee, they didn't award anybody prize. And they cited lack of suitable candidates. Actually, Gandhi was the candidate, almost settled, but because he died, and because posthumous prizes are not usually awarded, there are some exceptions to the award. But other than Gandhi, I think Lise Meitner is a very classic case of a very blatant discrimination in science. And incidentally, in last November, while searching the files of in the archives of the Nobel Committee in Stockholm, I found a letter written by a very reputed physicist, Max Born, who mentioned of Lise Meitner that it is a case of discrimination, she should be given. So she completed her doctoral research in 1905. See, 1905, almost 125 years ago, a woman completed PhD in physics is something remarkable. And she worked in Austria, then Germany, and then because of the Nazis, the rise of the Nazis here to Germany and settled in Sweden, and possibly she expired while in England. now I come to my point, the women in social sciences. The first person that I mentioned in the case of Edith Abbott. Incidentally, for this presentation, I relied quite heavily on Palgrave dictionary. And if you look at the Palgrave dictionary of 1987-88 editions, but it is a four-volume dictionary of economics. And it is a very expensive book. Maybe its price may be around 80,000 or 1 lakh. And I'm not sure whether it is available. And in this four-volume dictionary, the very first item, normally dictionaries go in alphabetical order A, B, C, D. So the very first item of this four-volume dictionary comes to Edith Abbott. So the woman occupies the very first entry. Edith Abbott was a social reformer, economic historian, and a pioneer in USA in the study of economic position of women. And she had a sibling also. So she was also quite active. But I think it is about, it received the due recognition from the social scientists, especially the sociologists. You have a sociology department here. Is there anyone from sociology department here? So are you familiar with this name? Yes or no? I am not sure. When I asked my colleagues here, we have a sociology department, I didn't get a very positive response. And in 1902, she enrolled in a summer session in the University of Chicago and obtained her PhD in 1905, the year in which Lisa Meitner also got it. So, women securing a PhD from a university like the University of Chicago almost 120 years ago is a very remarkable achievement. And her PhD work was mostly the wages of unskilled labor in USA between 1850 and 1900. And in 1906, she went to London School of Economics. So again, a woman traveling all the way from USA to London on a fellowship to work on women in industry is also something commendable. And while in Chicago, she came in contact with Sophie Breckenridge. And this lady, I will also talk of this lady. They jointly joined the newly established Chicago School of Civics and Philanthropy, and where Breckenridge was the director of research. So, in 1908, a lady is heading the director of research in Chicago. That is quite amazing. When the number of women in higher education in academics was very, very big. And but what is more important, these two ladies, Breckenridge and Abbott, they started a journal, Social Science Review, in 1927. And the Social Science Review is a very prestigious journal. So this shows something that women, they were involved in academics when it was mostly male dominated. So you see that this JP stands for Journal of Political Economy, one of the most celebrated journals in economics, and American Journal of Sociology. So Abbott published papers, see the years, 1905, 1906, so almost 120 years or 125 years ago, someone is publishing in these journals. That is very, a very difficult achievement to attain. And you see that Abbott also had written a forgotten minimum wage bill. We talk of minimum wages, but almost 120 years ago or 110 years ago, she worked on it. Nobody in US context. I have just talked about this lady, Breckenridge, so I do not uh, go into her working details. And then you see that she and Edith, they collaborated. They collaborated in starting a new journal and also in publishing some works. The next is Clara Elizabeth College. She was basically a civil servant who joined the Labour Department in UK. And uh, her lifelong passion was basically earnings and employment of women. So woman is researching and contributing on women labor and employment. This must be a work of gender and it should fit in gender studies. And in 1894, she contributed articles on female labor and earnings. So that means 1894, and this is 2024. So you can see that 130 years ago, a lady is contributing. See, this Bulgarian dictionary is a very prestigious publication, and not everybody will be asked to contribute that. They are mostly invited. So it shows her expertise in the field of labor, and she produced several reports on women's employment, which were published as parliamentary papers in UK. And she secured a master's degree in 1885, so almost I think 150 years ago. And was the first woman fellow of University College London. And she was one of the founders of Economic Club in 1890, and more importantly, she was one of the founders of British Economic Club, the Royal Economic Society. So a lady coming forward to form a Royal Economic Society, which later became, has to be recorded. And as you see, she produced lots of work on women and employment. Actually, she was a government servant and servant in Labour Department. So she was asked to produce a number of reports. And you see the last one, money wages of indoor domestic servants. So that means, see, 120 years ago, someone would be thinking and talking of domestic workers, their wages, maybe working conditions. Today it is very common. Then the next is Millicent Cadiz Fawcett. She was a leading suffragist and she was author of a widely used textbook, Political Economy for Peace, 1870. The textbook is written by a woman and which is a highly popular textbook. And the education of women of the middle and upper classes. This was an article that and essays and lectures on social and political subjects, which she authored with her husband, and takes in political economy. So this one takes in political economy, or say political economy for beginners, are already 150 years old. Then Ida Minerva Tarver, she was an economic journalist, and what I think most important of this lady is that she is best known for her 200 work on history of the Standard Oil Company, which was published in 1904. See, publishing or writing history of the companies is a very different type of research. Uh, in India also, you will find, say, history of the Tata. You will find history of the State Bank, but you will not possibly find, say, history of the Wipro or say history of the, say, Birla, like this. So Standard Oil Company is a very famous company, and uh, she, between 1912 and 1915, she uh, visited several handpicked companies to understand the industrial conditions there. And she even went to Paris to study women in French Revolution. So this is definitely someone who is interested in gender studies. And she even attended the Paris Peace Conference, which was held in 1990 after the First World War. But paradoxically, Congress was against women's suffrage. When all other leading ladies at that time, they would fight for women's voting rights, equal rights. She was against this. I do not know why. And in the business of being woman, in this book, she advised members of her sex to stay at home. This is quite paradoxical. And this is also important. She preferred career to marriage and remain single. Nowadays, these issues are with the women, they have to manage both their career and family. But she preferred to remain single so that she could devote more time to her research work. Now, this lady, Mary Mary Marshall, we know everybody of Alfred Marshall, but very few of us know that Marshall's wife was also an economist, but she was overshadowed by the towering influence of Marshall. Mary Bailey Marshall taught at Newnham College, and she tutored many students. She teach economics. Actually, she was a student of Marshall, and they later married. But and in 1879, she authored with Alfred Marshall Economics of Industry. When we talk of economics of industry, Marshall has later written Principles of Economics, which is well known. But this was the earlier one, Economics of Industry. And everybody knows that Marshall authored Economics of Industry, Principles of Economics. But nobody possibly takes into cognizance the intellectual contributions and inputs of Mary Bailey Marshall. So Marshall's wife remained in the background. And she was also, after Marshall's death in 1924, she was the first librarian of Marshall Library in the University of Cambridge. And she contributed some notes in economic journals which clearly indicate that she had originality, independent mind, clarity. So, unfortunately, she always remained in the background, shadowed by Alfred Marshall. Then I talk of Rosa who is considered as one of the most prominent Marxist writers of her time and maybe even today. Rosa Luxemburg is considered an authority. And if I have to mention two ladies who have authority on Marxist economics, Rosa Luxemburg is one, and the other one I may say Joan Robinson from our side, economic side. And she also obtained a PhD for her book, The Industrial and Vehicle Poland, that is, the industrial development of Poland. And she got it in 1897, earlier than Meitner or Abbott. This book, uh, social, uh, uh, social reform or revolution, that is social reform or revolution, which was published in 1900, and her opus magnum, The Accumulation des Capital, The Accumulation of Capital. Incidentally, Joan Robinson also shares a book with the same title, The Accumulation of Capital. And she would lecture on political economy and then in economic history in the party school of German social democracy. She was deeply involved with social democratic movement in Germany and Poland. Then the name of PhD Soeb is well known to the political scientists and sociologists. And she was also a feminist and one of the founders of the London School of Economics and Science Society in London. And in 1891, she produced the cooperative movement in Great Britain and uh, industrial democracy, which she co-authored with her husband, PhD Soeb is well known. Rosa Luxemburg is also well known, but I think Edith Abbott or Elizabeth College, they are not at all well known or known to many of us, or most of us. So these are some of the works of PhD Soeb. Wages of men and women, should they be equal? An interesting title, no doubt, very relevant even today. So I'll skip this. And now this is not directly related to academics, but I should mention three names where women activists of peace and women rights, and as a result of that, they would also write it off. May not be recent papers or articles, but pamphlets or newspaper articles, etc. And one is Jane Addams. She won worldwide recognition in the first third of the 20th century as a pioneer social worker in America. And she received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1931. She was the second lady to get a Nobel Peace Prize. The first was Bertha von Suttner of Austria. And these ladies, they were also very much associated with the suffragette movement. And this Baroness Bertha Sophie Felicita von Suttner, actually, I think she was the secretary of Nobel, or collaborated with Alfred Nobel for some time. And it is believed that it was Suttner who convinced Nobel to institute an award for peace prize. Nobel Prize is given for 5 disciplines: physics, chemistry, physiology of medicine, literature, and peace. Now, peace prize is given from Norway, while other 4 are announced and controlled and managed by the Royal Swedish Academy in Stockholm. And it was Suttner who basically influenced. She was a peace activist, and as far as economics is concerned, economics Nobel is not strictly a Nobel. It is a Nobel memorial. So there is a debate, but it is considered as common. And in 1889, she published a novel, The Watchman Writing, which English translation is Laid Out Your Arms. So she was a pacifist and an activist of peace. And this book was published in 37 editions and translated into language. We can easily understand how popular and important this book was. And she was witnessed the foundation of the Interparliamentary Union, and she was also associated with the formation of or suggested formation of International Court of Justice like that. And I have already mentioned this part. And see what was Nobel. It for me, convince me, and then I will do something great for the movement. Alfred Nobel said to Bertha Fox. So this uh, quotation or this statement carries the charm that it was Sumner who convinced Nobel to earmark money for a peace award, Nobel Peace Prize. And finally, I mentioned the name of this lady, Anna Christine Margaret Bouquet-Wilson. We, the students and teachers of economics, we all know the name of Bouquet-Wilson. Was one of the stalwarts of Swedish school, one of the stalwarts of monetary economics. But we do not know that Wilson's wife, Anna Bouquet-Wilson, was also a very important personality during her time. She was basically a Norwegian lady, and technically speaking, Wilson and Bouquet, they didn't marry because Wilson was against this father. And this lady, this Anna Bouquet-Wilson, she was also associated, she was a lawyer, she was associated with the suffragette movement and peace movement, and she was one of the three members who was in the League of Nations, newly formed Swedish delegate to the League of Nations in Geneva in 1920. So what we see is that women, they didn't get much opportunity. They were cornered, they were not given access to education, to politics, to other issues. But in spite of that, there were some women who were remarkably forward, much advanced of their times, and they contributed a lot in the development of different subjects, social science, science. There are many such ladies in other subjects. I have just mentioned the case of economics and social science. So I think we should salute all these ladies who had to fight against all odds, and they will permanently remain etched in our memories. Unfortunately, we do not give much importance to the contributions of these ladies, and unfortunately, many of us, we remember only few names. We remember Marie Curie. The students of physics remember Lise Meitner, but there are many others who are not remembered for several reasons. And I think if you are working on the gender history, I think that one way to unearth is to go to the old journals. Some journals are 130, 150 years old, and try to see which woman or how many women they would write or contribute more or less regularly to these journals. Again, my focus has been too narrow because I could consider only English journals. But there are journals in German, in Danish, in French. So we need to unearth these historical sources to write at least a pamphlet, if not a full history of the women in the academics. We do not always consider journals in our language. I finish with just one anecdote. This is not related to uh, women studies or this. Uh, in economics, we uh, we used to read, because in our syllabus, SAFA system. And SAFA model of SAFA system is very famous. It is very, it was highly discussed, researched, 60s, 70s. Now, the SAFA model came in the early 60s. But later research revealed that one French Jesuit father, Father Maurice Cotron, he developed the same thing much earlier, but it was beyond our knowledge, because this man, who was the Jesuit father, he would publish in Jesuit charts. You don't expect an economist to search a chart to find references or research. So nowadays we are very much concerned about, I would publish submit only chair listed charts. I would publish where I get points. But earlier, knowledge was not so, you contribute papers in different, and economics was enriched not just by economics, by social. Pareto was a social engineer, basically. Sociologists, engineers, philosophers, so from different disciplines. So I think we should try to unearth some other works, like other women, scattered in different journals, academic and professional journals of 130, 150 years ago. Thank you.
Sorry, let me answer.
Eject করে
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for this well-informed lecture. I must agree that most of the ladies that Dr. Ghosh has talked about are not at all well known. We know only few of them. We know their work, only few of their work. But thank you, sir, for focusing on the works, the contribution of these well-known, not so known ladies who have made a huge contribution in the field of academics, in science, in different streams of social science, in economics, sociology, literature, and so on. Also, we came to know the women activists of peace and who work for peace and women rights. So, as Dr. Ghosh has said, we must salute these ladies. So, these distinguished ladies who have really made contribution in their respective fields. Being a student of economics and working for so many years, also I am not very aware about the lady marshal. So there are so many of them, as Dr. Ghosh was saying, that so many of them, they have made so many contributions, but still we are not aware of those, their works. So thank you again, Dr. Ghosh, for throwing light on these beautiful ladies, their work. So, any question from any one of you? So I think then we can come to the end of this session, this plenary session. Thanks to Dr. Shantanu Ghosh again. So we have come to the end of this session, and we are now inviting. I'm now inviting the two conveners of this two-day conference to summarize the proceedings of the conference.
Thank you, madam. Okay, so a very good afternoon to all. Now we have to come to the end of this 2 days international conference on gendered societies, multi-dimensional perspectives and changing patterns, organized by Department of Geography, Education, History and Philosophy in association with Internal Quality Assurance Cell of East Calcutta Girls College and collaboration with Regional Science Association of India. We actually overwhelmed to have received over 100 abstracts, including a few from overseas also. Out of there, about 90 plus papers have been presented in today's seminar. This wide participation was really made possible due to this blended mode and in which the conference was held. We had 9 themes on gender issues regarding the historical perspectives of gender studies, women empowerment, women ethics, gender equality in the education sector, gender demographies, gender transformative approaches, the philosophical perspective, feminist philosophical perspective, gender roles and SDGs, environmental issues and gender studies, feminization of nature and movements, and gender mainstreaming. So now in each of them, the response was really very enthusiastic. Also, there was a preference for online participation. And in addition to the paper presenters, we are really very fortunate to hear from a number of very eminent speakers. They are Professor Geraldine Forbes, Professor Kuntala Lavmiri Dutta, Dr. Kollan Rudro, Professor Shumana Bandhopadhyay, Dr. Aparna Bandhopadhyay, Dr. Shauli Chakraborty Acharya, Dr. Sujata Subramanian, Professor Gopal Samanto, Dr. Ridvi Chakraborty, Professor Shantanu Ghosh, and last but not the least, our respected Principal Madam, Dr. Ujjayini Mukhopadhyay. So, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to thank all the resource persons and the participants and the chairpersons who really enlightening us on various aspects of our contemporary gender issues. Thank you, everyone.
This seminar would not have been possible without the wholehearted support of our respectable principal madam. It was actually her brainchild, and she guided and encouraged us in every problem or issues that we faced. She really supported us in all our endeavors. We are really thankful to her. At the very last moment of this seminar, we extend our warm wishes to our collaborators, Regional Science Association of India, and support from West Bengal Pollution Control Board. We really thank our students who have, without their support, this would have never been possible. Because we faculties are doing our best, but without our students, we are no one. So we thank those students, volunteers, students who have participated. We also thank the organizing committee. It is not thanking them, but we are a part of them. So we are thankful that all of us could meet our all odds and accomplish our targets as far as possible. Please forgive us for the numerous mistakes we have done, and we hope our participants, both online and offline, will forgive us and support us even for our future structured involvements and endeavors. Thank you. So here's the end. Just a few announcements, which will be always there. अच्छा,
Ma'am,
as our principal ma'am is here, a few concluding words from her. So a few announcements that we had made a call for papers. We had made a call for papers. That last day is 1st June. It's on the same email ID that we were taking the abstracts. Those who would like to submit those, please send us that. And after that, after we get the full papers, we can decide on whether we can make a book, chapter, or present it in any journal for publication. So unless we get the full papers and review it, we won't be able to confirm what we can do with it. So that's a request. 1st June is our last date. Please stick to the deadline. And secondly, there were a number of queries about online certificates. So we'll present them. We'll mail individually everyone within a week. Please excuse us because of the holidays in between. So by next week, we'll send all of them. And a few participation certificates have been requested for. That also we'll give. Today, those who are present, they will get it today. Those who have participated online, they will also get it by the next week. Yes, there's a feedback form given in the group, so please fill that up. And anybody would want to say anything about the seminar? Any suggestions, feedbacks, or positive, negative, anything? Everything was well organized. Thank you, everybody.